Hey everybody, it's Busy Mark and I am back with another video, but before we begin, I am pleased to announce that The Modest Fitting has officially launched a women's clothing boutique offering skirts and dresses that embody modesty, femininity, and beauty. To learn more about dresses like this one and others available for purchase, head over to themodestfitting.com. But without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so I am back with another Please Advise. This was not a Please Advise sent to me. It was actually sent to another content creator that doesn't actually do a response. They just post the question and let the viewers respond in the comment section with what they would advise the person to do. And so I will actually link the original post and for you to watch, and also the comment section, because what caused me to want to review this question is that the advice in the comment section is absolutely absurd. And I couldn't believe the degree to which so many people were affirming what was such an obviously bad path to go down. And it made me wonder if I hope people in the body are not as confused as the general populace is about what the correct course of action is in this particular situation. So I'm going to give my best opinion from what I believe would be a biblically, from a biblical point of view, but I am interested in knowing what you guys think in the comment section below. So I'll just go ahead and get started. The question is, I want to help my ex-wife out financially, but my current wife doesn't agree with this. For the 8 years I was married to my ex-wife, she helped me tremendously while I was attending college. I don't think I could have finished my degree without her financial support. She worked full-time and even took on a part-time job to cover all of our expenses so that I could focus on studying. However, 3 years after I graduated, the strain on our marriage became too much. We decided to separate and divorced 1 year later. A few years after that, I met my current wife and we got married. Recently, my ex-wife was diagnosed with a chronic illness that forced her to leave her job. I found out she was struggling since then. Given everything she did for me when we were together, I feel compelled to support her. However, my wife strongly disagrees with me giving my ex-wife money, saying it's not my responsibility anymore. I find myself in a difficult situation. I love my current wife, but I also care about my ex-wife. I feel a sense of duty to her after she supported me in the past. What should I do? So that's the question that the man posed to this platform. Typically, I don't cover questions from the male perspective, being that I am a woman and I am a woman who is speaking to other women. So I tend to not focus on these kinds of dilemmas. But I thought this one was worth discussing because I thought this was a pretty cut and dry situation, but the comment section felt entirely different. So the first thing that comes to mind is listen to your wife. If your wife doesn't feel comfortable with you financially supporting another woman with whom you had a marriage and a sexual relationship, it's well within wisdom on her part to not encourage that kind of crossing of boundaries. That to me seems really obvious and really shouldn't require discussion, but apparently it does. And I wanted to, obviously I don't know the person who wrote this, but if I knew the person, I would pose to them, in the event your wife was married before you and you are now her second husband, if her first husband fell ill and he needed someone to be a caretaker to him, someone who could, bathe him and feed him and clothe him and just watch over him while he's being nursed back to health, would you allow your wife to take on that nurturing and caretaker role for a man with whom she was previously married and had a sexual relationship with? Most men would not allow that kind of crossing of boundaries. And yet this man is asking essentially to be able to do the equal opposite thing with his new wife. And I think sometimes we have a hard time understanding how out of line our behavior is. until we give an equal opposite example to help us see it from a different perspective. The fact that this man also is trying to be a financial provider to his current wife and also to his ex-wife makes me understand that he does not understand that divorce means something. And not only does divorce mean something, marriage means something. And both of those things, marriage and divorce, holds boundaries within them, boundaries that I believe that didn't really matter much to him. Just like divorce means something, marriage means something. And so if he understood and respected the boundaries of marriage, he wouldn't have divorced his first wife. He wouldn't have taken the strain on the marriage to mean, oh, now we can just bail because it's gotten hard. So in putting away his first wife for unbiblical reasons, he proved to the world and to whatever subsequent woman he was going to marry that he is someone who does not respect the boundaries of marriage. So it does not surprise me that he also does not respect the boundaries of divorce. It also does not surprise me that he does not respect the boundaries of his second marriage, which is why he's even asking his new wife to let him take care of his old wife. Marriage means something. And it means that, the vows that we take are they are till death do us part, not till strain and hardship do us part. Biblically speaking, there's only 2 allowances of divorce that I know of: sexual immorality, and if you're married to an unbeliever who does not wish to remain with you. If the unbeliever wants a divorce, then you can grant that. But outside of those 2 reasons, it's till death do us part. He did not respect those boundaries of marriage the first time around, so it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't respect them the second time around. This is also an aside, but I know that I'm going to step on some toes, so I'm not going to state this firmly and dogmatically as if there is never any other kind of situation. But this is, I think, a word of caution to people who are entering into marriages with people who have gotten divorced from their first spouse, and the reasons for that divorce were not biblical. First off, the Bible calls that practice adultery. When you marry someone who has divorced their original spouse and the divorce was not rooted in biblical reasons, the Bible calls that practice adultery. But in addition to that, you also should bear in mind that when you are looking at someone who has divorced from their first spouse, and in this case, their first wife, for unbiblical reasons, you are looking at someone who not only is capable of, but is proving that they do not respect marriage. And you're just betting on the fact that with you, this same person is going to be different. And that's a really big gamble to take. So while my heart kind of goes out to the second wife, that her husband would put her in a position where she would effectively have to share her husband, financially speaking, there's another side of me that doesn't completely feel all of the empathy, because if you knew that he put away his wife for unbiblical reasons and didn't respect the boundaries of that marriage, it's unfair to have the expectation that he will respect the boundaries of his marriage to you. This is one of the risks that you take when entering into multiple marriages unlawfully. There are circumstances that the Bible would would allow a divorce, and then your second marriage is not counted as adultery, or so there are reasons. But if it's not one of those reasons, and this person left his wife, you just need to come to terms with the fact that you are looking at someone who does not respect the boundaries of marriage, and likely will not respect the boundaries of your marriage either. So that's something to think about. The other thing that I wanted to point out as a kind of caution to women is this is why I believe it's important to, when you are vetting a man, to ensure that at the very least he is employed at the cost of living. when I read the Bible, I read a document that appears to very clearly paint the picture that the husband is to be a source to his wife, a source of protection, a source of headship, a source of leadership, a source of provision for his wife and for his children. And I sincerely do believe that if a man is not able to provide at the minimum for himself, he is not yet a man. If he cannot clothe, feed, and house himself, he has not yet arrived at manhood. If he is not able to provide for himself and at least a woman, he is not eligible for marriage. And I think a lot of women put themselves in bad positions when they choose to enter into marriage with men who are not eligible for marriage, or worse, with men who are not even eligible to be called adult men yet. Now, I do think that there can be a little bit of wiggle room in this when we're talking about young couples whose families are okay to invest in the couple and help them get on their feet. That's something that I would love to be able to do even for my children. If they got married young and the young man is working diligently to establish himself and both him and her need some help from the parents on both sides, I would love to be a part of an effort like that to help the young couple get established. So I think that there's something to be said about that, to have a degree of flexibility. But if we're not talking about extremely young people, if a man cannot feed and house himself, he has not arrived at manhood yet. If he can't provide for a woman, he is not eligible for marriage. And I believe that the first wife put herself in a very bad position by marrying a man who was ineligible for marriage. And then she made matters worse by doing complete role reversal with this man and taking on the man's role, and he took on a woman's role. He was sitting at home being provided for. I understand he was in school, but you don't kick your wife out of the house. And I don't mean kick her out, but I mean you kick her in the back to go out and be a work mule for you while you stay home. And your wife, it says she was working full time and even took on additional part-time work. So she was working full time and a half to provide for a man. She completely did role reversal with her husband, and then it's no surprise that he says 3 years after I graduated, the strain just became too much and we decided to divorce. Of course the strain became too much. That's not the role that, when I read the Bible, I don't see a depiction of a woman sustaining, being a source to and a provider to her husband. I don't see that. And so it would follow that women who are either voluntarily or being made to occupy that role oftentimes can't stand up under that pressure because they're carrying a load they as a woman were not designed to bear. And so it makes sense that the marriage gave way. So that's a caution that I would have for women, is from the onset, please do intelligent and biblical vetting of a man before entering into marriage, because it can create dysfunctional role reversal that can be very difficult to undo later on. The other thing that I wanted to point out too is that this woman, the first wife, slaved away to provide for a grown man working full-time and part-time to pay his way through college, only for him to divorce and then let another woman reap the benefits of all of the seeds that she had sown. On the one hand, my heart goes out to her, because what a robbery, what a travesty. But we have to be careful to sow seeds. We can't just sow seeds. We have to sow the kind of seeds that God has called us to sow. It was not in her best interest to reverse roles with her husband and then sow the seeds of a provider and of being a source to a man and being his kind of leader in that way. Those were the wrong seeds to sow. And having done that, it's now another woman who is occupying the position of wife that is reaping the benefits. And I think that unfortunately that happens more often than I think we understand. And it's something that I wish that women would be honest about, not from the perspective of bringing bitterness, to the internet and like, after all I did for him, this, no, I don't want to hear the bitterness, but it's an incredible lesson that older women could pass down to younger women and say, it does not pay to do things out of the biblical order, because you are sowing seeds, but it may not produce the harvest you're anticipating on reaping. It might be that you're sowing seeds for another person to reap all of the work that you have done, but they can do that because you were out of order. I would love for older women to be able to be honest with younger women, not with bitterness, not with anger, not with blame, but just with full accountability. It was me who was out of order, and this is the payment I received for sowing seeds in the wrong way. I hope that younger women can hear that and can just understand all of the different moving pieces that could land people in the kind of situation that we're reading about. He also mentioned, that he had received news that his first wife was diagnosed with chronic illness that forced her to leave her job, and that she had been struggling ever since. Why is this man keeping tabs on the welfare of his first wife? They did not mention that they had any children together. I don't think they did, because children would be a big detail. You wouldn't just leave that out. So I'm going to assume they didn't have kids together. So there really was no reason for you to still be checking up on your ex-wife and keeping tabs on her physical and financial fitness. So that in and of itself, he says, I found out. And I wrote, how? How did you find out what's going on with your ex-wife? Why are you keeping tabs on a marriage that you voluntarily walked away from? You divorced her, and then not only did you divorce from her, but then you married another woman. So now you've created, even if it was illegitimate at its beginning, you did in fact enter into another covenant. And even with this covenant, your attention is split. And that's just something else that I want to point out too. He's also in the wrong for even being in a position to have such a pulse on what's happening in the life of a woman that he has already divorced, especially bearing in mind that he has another woman in his marriage bed at home. There's something wrong with that. There's something fishy about that. And so anyway, he says at the end of the letter, what should I do? To me, the answer is obvious. You need to honor your marital vows. But if that is a notion that's foreign, which it sounds as though it is, then it will not occur to you that you have a responsibility to the woman that you have taken in covenant, and that you do not have a responsibility anymore to the woman that you put away and that you have already divorced. Marriage means something, and divorce means something. Right? So I felt like this was, again, I'm going to link the original post so that you can read through the comments yourself, but it just made me so sad. Everyone in the comments was like, just don't tell your wife and send your ex-wife money. And I'm like, there were just so many different things that were wrong in the first setup, the role reversal, the being a provider. So he said the marriage was for 8 years. And then after he says, however, 3 years after I graduated, the strain was just too much. So she was probably like supporting him for 5 years with a full-time job and then a part-time job. Then he finally graduated. And then in the 3 years after I graduated, the strain on our marriage became too much. The first thing was to do not be a provider to a man. Like, that's one of the requirements for marriage. He has to be first and foremost a man. He has to be able to provide for himself. And then to be eligible for marriage, you have to be more than just a man. You have to be a man who is able to be a husband. And the way that you are eligible to be a husband, one of those requirements is that you are able to provide for a wife. And when we don't do things in their proper order, it just makes this snowball effect, because he wasn't a man. He hadn't arrived at manhood. He was unable to provide for a wife, meaning he was ineligible for marriage. And then because they entered into marriage anyway, then she had to do full-on role reversal provider for him. And then because she got burned out functioning in a capacity she was not designed to be in, she then, it sounds like together, decided to divorce. And so all of that work that you've done to build this man is gone. Now he's got a new wife who's benefiting from all of the labor that may have been part of the reason she became sick. I don't know. That's purely speculation on my part. But perhaps, like, would it be the first time we've heard of women who have worked themselves into illness? And so now she's got this illness, but because she's not your wife, she's not able to make withdrawals on all of these deposits that she's made. And now your new wife is also being shortchanged because now you're trying to put her in a kind of sister wife situation. And all of this is happening because the man in the middle refuses to acknowledge and to restrict himself to the boundaries of marriage. He didn't do the first time around, and he's not doing it the second time around. So there's so many steps that lead up to this confusion that I just wish that we would all, like, again, I don't know if this man is a believer. He doesn't sound like he is, but I still think that it's a learning opportunity for us as believers. Let's read the Word of God. Let's pay attention closely to the depictions of right and wrong and things like how he has the marriage structured, because our culture today will try to sell you on all of these different configurations of marriage, and they'll make it sound like this is just, it's an alternative way to go about. No, let's just stick to the book being the Bible. Let's do it by the Word of God, because he has more sense than us. He has more wisdom than us, and we can save ourselves from so much heartache and pain if we would just do it his way. I wish that he and his first wife would have stuck it out because they still had an opportunity to right the wrongs. They could have gotten their roles back in order. He could have been the provider like he had supposed to been the whole time. She could have been a submissive helpmeet to him. Instead of being a provider to him, she could have got in her proper position. And then if, calamity struck and she became ill, he would be able to continue being the husband to her that she needed him to be. But because they both were out of order, then they both got out of order even more by getting divorced. Then he was out of order again by taking a wife that he wasn't actually eligible to have. Now he's got the new wife, and now he's got torn affection. Now the new wife is having to pretty much share her husband. It's all mess. And this all comes because we don't follow God's structuring and order for our lives and the way that he wants our relationships ordered. So I feel for everybody involved, is because everyone's a loser. Everybody loses in this scenario. Everybody loses. And so I want to know what you guys think. And if you have a chance, go to the original post. I will include the link. The comment section was like, I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was like, if this man takes the advice that's being given to him in the comment section, he's not going to be just once divorced. He's going to be twice divorced because he's doing wrong to the second wife now. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time.